Today on GreatPlacesSeen, we travel along scenic rivers and lush mountains to a seemingly tranquil location, but where long-kept secrets and details of previous lives lurk in the ground, call out from among old structures as we grind through trails tread for centuries and dare to walk through the mist of the past. Come along to find out what stories these hills are waiting to tell.
Today I'm on US Route 15 North in Maryland, and I'm heading to Pennsylvania, Little Buffalo State Park.
I have spent most of my life living in or near Washington, D.C., and well, as a geeky kid growing up in the early days of manned spaceflight and moon landings, I was also into a lot of the other things kids like to learn about, like dinosaurs. Maryland and Pennsylvania are home to lots of cool fossils of these amazing creatures that once roamed where we travel now. In fact, old animal trails became used by early humans, and over time some are the very roads we roll over. The U.S. route system is a century old, created in 1926. Route 15 stretches almost 800 miles from New York to South Carolina. I'm covering just a tenth of that today, about 75 miles of often very nice four-lane divided highway with light traffic, and much along the scenic Susquehanna and Juniata Rivers. I'm heading to a place where it's said buffalo once roamed, more accurately bison, but in Pennsylvania? Maybe you've heard of it, this is a new one on me. Somehow I just don't imagine these animals I associate with the West being here, at least in the wild. Apparently it's true, as this state park is a little over a half hour north of Pennsylvania's capital, Harrisburg, honors its buffalo predecessors. As for little, no one seemed to know if these ancient animals were smaller than present-day bison, or if it refers to the size of the park. No matter, I'm looking forward to staying in a place new to me. U.S. Route 22 snakes along the Juniata River, much as you might find in some places out west. These mountains are smaller, more rounded and tree-covered, but the Appalachian chain is the world's oldest. And, give it a few 100 million years, driving through the Rockies may then appear very similar. Signs have appeared, I'm very close. Newport is on the Juniata River. There used to be a ferry that crossed here, and the old Pennsylvania Canal. Technology overtook. Newport became a railroad town. You never know what you'll find when you search a place like this. Meghan Markle is now British royalty as the Duchess of Sussex, married to Prince Harry. Her father is from right here. So is Billy Cox, part of a stellar Brooklyn Dodgers infield. He had a 2-run double and a 3-run homer in Major League Baseball's 1953 World Series. I'd say Newport has some claims to fame. Part of Newport is Little Buffalo State Park. One of the main local roads bisects the park east to west, so there's always a few vehicles along here. The campsites have no running water. I'll fill my tank here. Very large, very spacious, very clean. And judging by the reservation list on the bulletin board, very unused. I'm the only one here. Well, there is a camp host, and I'm in space number 2, which looked pretty good on the satellite image. We'll see what it's like in real life. I like it. It's what I expected. With just one trailer nearby and the camp host, I have a very quiet place. The campground is located near the top of a ridge, so I don't think I'll be hiking the park from here. It's warm but dry. A nice breeze is flowing through the trailer. I'll definitely rest well tonight. Well, there is that rooster up the hill who doesn't seem to know what time of day it is. Seems there's a home near this edge of the park with some livestock. Well, no matter. I'm enjoying what remains of today after a quick setup. As I post my travels and adventures on this channel, there's a second GPS channel with a variety of random shorter videos. It's like that bonus DVD you used to get. Subscribe, it's free. Today I'm not in the park. The Hershey RV show is about an hour's drive away, and I'm checking out some of the rigs a day before the show opens to the public. Videos from that are on both this channel and GPS 2. I'm taking a short time, though, to see the lake area now, before I stay the full day Wednesday to explore in depth. Holman Lake is man-made. Little Buffalo Creek fills it, and continues past on the other side of the large earthen dam as it flows to the Juniata River. There's a big grassy area on the other side with a huge swimming pool and playground complex. I see locals parking along the side of the road and going for long walks or run along the lake, cycle. I even saw a rollerblader. For a small park, it projects a big image. I had a very busy day at Hershey, with an hour drive each way, so I'm looking forward to seeing more here. For last year's Hershey show, I stayed at Gifford Pinchot State Park to the south. You can find that video in the 2023 playlist. It was a surprisingly great find, and I think this one will be too. As for tonight, very simple, very quiet. Morning on the lake. It's peaceful, calm, and yet very active. No matter what body of water you camp near, there always seems to be someone fishing from a boat early in the morning. Little Buffalo State Park has what it calls a self-guided quest for young visitors. Who says I ever grew up? I'm on it. I'll walk between 5 locally historic places. Kids can gather clues at each stop for a prize at the end. It doesn't appear far for distance on the map, but this walk will end up taking some time, and adding in the fact that I'll have to go back to the car at park headquarters. Across from the parking lot is the first stop, the Blue Ball Tavern, now a museum. Today it's closed because it's the middle of the week and school has started. There's nobody here. This tavern operated as early as 1798. The name comes from a large blue ball which, when raised and suspended from a pole, told travelers there were rooms available for the night. This tavern sat on the so-called Great Road, where a series of similar places served as points of rest for traveling soldiers during the War of 1812 and the Civil War. Taverns were also recruiting points for militia, and where locals stayed informed of political and social events. News traveled fast even then, thanks to the telegraph. People here immediately heard about the start of the Civil War with the attack on Fort Sumter. The telegraph operators in Charleston, South Carolina, and here in Newport were cousins. You could even get your mail here, and vote. A horn would sound from this tavern, alerting the White Ball Tavern near the campground now to get a fresh horse and meal ready for an incoming soldier. The tavern once faced the opposite direction. In 1855, a tornado ripped through the area, damaging many buildings. The top portion of the tavern was rebuilt to face the road as it does today. The Pennsylvania Canal along the river changed how people traveled through this area. It was far easier to float than it was to ride a horse or in a bumpy carriage over dirt roads. The popularity of taverns fell, and this one ceased to operate in 1841, even though soldiers used it 20 years later during the Civil War. In 1865, the tavern was rebuilt as a farmhouse on the same foundation, and which houses the present-day museum.
Stop number 2 on the trail is Sulphur Springs Cemetery.
The cemetery is the final resting place for early local residents, including veterans of the Civil War and World War II. It's a quiet hillside not far from the tavern. A small rural cemetery now maintained by the state as part of the park. Markers mostly date to the mid and late 1800s. Some are no longer legible. John Cook is interred here, both with his first and second wife. He owned the Blue Ball Tavern and stopped serving alcohol in 1841 as a testament to his growing religious faith, and also as mentioned when tavern patrons diminished because of the canal. Cook sold a parcel of land from his Sulphur Springs farm to the church for $1. The church would eventually be converted into a large chicken coop and later demolished. You may surmise it was likely very unfit for anything useful after the chickens held communion there. Among the veterans is John Clay. He joined the Union Army in 1861 and was shipped south all the way to Key West, Florida. That wasn't exactly a holiday destination in those days. Soldiers endured malaria, yellow fever, and heat they were not accustomed to. Clay also went to South Carolina and Louisiana before returning here to central Pennsylvania. He suffered eye disease from his service and was hospitalized in 3 states. After the Civil War, Clay was granted a pension of $16 a month for his continuing ailment, which was a lot at the time considering his 40-acre farm with a house, stable, and a horse was valued at $440 when he eventually died from heart failure. That's the equivalent to 3 years' worth of his pension. Sergeant Martin Orwin served during World War II on the USS Saratoga. That was one of the Navy's first aircraft carriers. Every life has many stories. Even from a small cemetery, there are many more we don't know. The park quest continues, back past the tavern to the next stop.
Well, that's me today. It is so scenic here that even the spillway has its own sitting area.
This is Clay's Bridge, one of only 14 covered bridges still standing in Pennsylvania's Perry County. We saw John Clay's marker in the cemetery. This bridge is named after him because it once crossed Little Buffalo Creek next to his house. The covered bridge was built in 1890, about a mile west of where the current lake is very narrow. After 81 years, it was moved to its present location as the new park was formed. Covered bridges were common, as the roof and sometimes full sides protected the wood for the actual bridge from rain and snow so it would last longer. There was no treated lumber or steel, and, well, who wanted to keep repairing and rebuilding the same bridge anyway? Although covered and protected, this bridge was refurbished in 1959, reconstructed in 1971 prior to the lake being created. A heavy snow in 1993 collapsed the roof. But as you walk through, the original arches and beams remain. Well, nowadays it is wired for power. This type of bridge is a Burr arch truss. Theodore Burr came up with this in 1804, secured a patent in 1817. It was a very stable design for heavy weights, and you'll find many of these in Indiana. They can span lengths of up to a mile. Burr moved to Pennsylvania to seek his fortune, but died early. 1,500 covered bridges once spanned Pennsylvania waterways. It still has the most of any state, with 219. More than 70 years after its patent, the Burr arch truss was used for Clay's Bridge, which carried its share of load for decades. It was even trusted enough for routine school bus routes. Now students walk through it when they are brought to the park for recreation or to learn more about nature and local history at the park's environmental classroom. Conveniently, the next stop is practically next door. Shoaff's mill originally served the Juniata furnace. Before coal was discovered as a fuel source, charcoal was made from wood, and the Juniata furnace produced a lot of charcoal. Mid-century in the 1800s, the furnace closed for good. William Shoaff bought the mill at auction in 1861. The millstones he used could weigh up to 3,000 pounds and either be solid or a composite of smaller stone pieces. A miller had to carefully sharpen the stones periodically to keep them grinding well. One composite grindstone came all the way from Paris, sold to millers in the U.S. for top dollar, and shipped across the Atlantic Ocean. Several French Burr stones, as they were known, were used at this mill and are among those left outside for visitors to see. A small canal called a mill race on the hill behind the large wheel brought water from a nearby stream. A gate was opened to send the water through, which turned the giant wheel, which rotated gears, shafts, and the millstones. This mill operated for 100 years, grinding cornmeal, making flour from wheat, pressing cider from apples. 3 generations of Shoaffs kept the big water wheel turning and the grinding stones grinding for almost 80 of those years until 1940. Like the tavern, the mill was not open in the middle of the week. Certainly, there's much to see outside, the big wheel, of course, and the millstones. Plenty of old stonework along the foundation and elsewhere. But anyone is free to peer inside the ground-level windows for a glance inside at some of the things that were used to run the mill, including some of the internal machinery that the giant outside wheel powered. It's a fascinating example of 19th century industry common to so many small communities, and this mill especially, since it had 2 lives. The first supporting the Juniata furnace to supply energy needs, and the second to give local farmers a place to refine their crops, and in turn provide the community with kitchen essentials. I have to say I'm very impressed with what this small park has put together to tell some of the stories from its past. From here I could walk back to the main trail, but instead I'm diverting to the Mill Trace Trail toward the small dam in Furnace Run Creek, where the water was diverted to the mill. Here's the mill race that guided the water to the mill, and a gate that was effectively the on-off switch for the water wheel. The mill race was dug by hand, with the help of horses and a wide shovel called a mill race scoop. The ground was loosened with a plow. Then the large iron scoop was dragged until it was full. The handles were pushed down, and the scoop was dragged to dumping areas, where the handles were pushed up and the dirt was deposited to strengthen the banks along the mill race. On the trail along the mill race, a seemingly remote area of the park, which on a day like today, I essentially have all to myself. There's the gate for the mill race, and the dam on the stream. This is such a beautiful day. A perfect time to come through here. Kind of funny, this is posted next to the dam. At one point I thought someone was in the stream wearing a gray coat and starting to stand up. No, I had flushed out a giant heron. Well, sorry about that. I'm sure it returned at some point after I left. Back on the main trail, which is actually an old rail trail that ran along Little Buffalo Creek and serviced the no longer present furnace and the mill. The rail line continued into what is now the lake, but ends by the earthen dam. The last stop on the park quest is way car number 12. Today it's the no way car, as in no way I'm really going to see it. Apparently finishing work was being done to refurbish the old rail car. A way car was used for maintenance, although the maintenance during my visit was on the rail car itself.
Like most parks, there are pavilions, picnic tables, grills, and plenty of them. It's also a big entertainment pavilion. Hey, you can have some nice shows out here. If you don't feel as if you'd like to walk the trails, well, the park has brought trail flora to you in this little garden. Although you probably won't see these out on the trail.
Let's take a quick look at the lake from on top of the dam. It's a wonderful view. The quest guide said the final clue was under the rail car. I'm obviously not going to look for that today, unless they mean the rails or the ties themselves. At any rate, I'm glad to see the park is actively keeping its assets in the best possible condition. It says a lot about this place, and why it appears so popular with residents. I didn't try to work out the clues, but I did get a sticker at the park office while picking up a map and some info. So I consider that a good prize for an old guy. After all, the real prize was walking through this area and seeing some of the places that have stood for a long time, like the tavern for more than 200 years. It's afternoon. I'm taking in some of the lake scenes along the road on the way back to the trailer. This day is not over, but the video is, as we're taking a break for now. I needed to take one after that walk through the park's landmarks. It's very nice, but a very warm day.
I keep a bag of freeze pops in the freezer, and that way I know that the freezer's working, and besides that, they're just good.
Still to come on GreatPlacesSeen, the pure natural beauty of Little Buffalo State Park, and a trek across one of its most challenging trails. As you see, this little park packs a big punch. Join me again as we enjoy round 2 next time.